Hello and welcome. I'm Asima Katauka and you're watching World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. China has launched a nationwide campaign to curb fire hazards in high-rise buildings after at least 128 people were killed in Hong Kong apartment fire. The move marks one of the country's most urgent safety crackdowns as Hong Kong enters its mourning period today. The Thai government has announced that floods in southern Thailand have killed 162 people, including 126 deaths in Sangkhla province. Government spokesperson Srirupong Angla Sakulkiliat has confirmed the casualties across 7 provinces, marking one of the deadliest flooding events in recent years. Ukraine's energy ministry has said that a wave of Russian missile and drone strikes on Ukraine has left over 600,000 people without power. The attack cut electricity to 500,000 people in Kyiv and 100,000 people in Kyiv region, marking one of the most disruptive strikes in months. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced that the resignation of his chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, following an anti-corruption raid. He calls for national unity, warning the country risks losing itself. German lawmakers have now passed the record 2026 budget amid a drawn-out fight over pension reforms pushed by young conservatives. Berlin also aims to back an EU ban on new internal combustion car engines from 2035. US President Donald Trump has announced plans to cancel most of former US President Joe Biden's executive orders. He claims that the auto pen was used improperly and Biden did not personally sign them. Pope Leo, now in his first foreign trip, has visited Istanbul's iconic Blue Mosque on the 3rd day of his trip to Turkey, marking his first visit to a Muslim place of worship since his election in May. The highly symbolic 15-minute visit following the footsteps of late Pope Benedict and late Pope Francis. French prosecutor has confirmed a 39-year-old man with 6 prior convictions that has been charged in France as the 4th suspect in the heist of France's crown jewels from the Louvre Museum. With his arrest and charges of gang robbery up to 15 years and criminal conspiracy of up to 10 years, authorities now believe all members of the heist team are in custody. Now for this hour, we start with Turkey. Turkey's transport ministry reports that the oil tanker Virat, part of Russia's shadow fleet, was hit twice by blasts in the Black Sea, first late Friday and then again on early Saturday today. Both strikes were attributed to Ukraine, as Ukraine's SBU intelligence service claimed, hitting the 2 tankers with sea drones in Black Sea. The vessel was about 35 miles off of Turkey's Black Sea coast when it was initially hit. Authorities say the second attack caused only minor damage. The ship remains stable and the crew is unharmed. The incident heightens concerns over escalating risks to commercial shipping in the region, particularly involving unregistered or unofficial vessels operating outside standard maritime oversight. Turkey continues to monitor the situation closely as investigations into the source and intent of the attacks proceed. Now we move on to our next news. Recent reports suggest that 2 miners were shot and killed by the IDF gunfire in Bani Suheila, east of Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip. The outlet cites a source at Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, where the victims were reportedly taken. Bani Suheila lies on the Israeli-controlled side of the Gaza ceasefire line, an area that has seen heightened tension in recent weeks. The Israeli Defense Forces have not issued an immediate comment on the report. The details surrounding the circumstances of the shooting remain unclear. Now, for this discussion, we welcome Yossi Cooper-Wasser. He's an Israeli intelligence and security expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Yossi, for joining us again. Yossi, what more can you tell us about this ongoing situation over there?
Well, thank you for having me. And clearly there is an ongoing tension, and the ceasefire between us and Hamas is quite fragile. Even though both sides are interested in maintaining it, the activities are putting a challenge in front of their ability to really maintain it. We have been challenged by ongoing attempts by Hamas terrorists to carry out terror attacks. I don't know what happened exactly in this Bani Suheila issue, but in the last month, almost on a daily basis, there is an attempt by terrorists from Hamas to carry out terror attacks along the line and penetrate through the red line, through the yellow line, in order to carry out terror attacks inside the areas controlled by Israel. And repeatedly, Israel has to take action in order to thwart these attacks. That's where we stand. And we are still waiting for Hamas to return the two last hostages' bodies that are in their custody. And we hope that this is going to happen soon, so that we shall be able to move to the second stage of the implementation of the Trump plan for Gaza, which begins with the disarmament of Hamas. We hope this is going to be the next step.
Do you think that currently, as we know that Hamas has not demilitarized, do you think we are still ready? Do you think Israel and Gaza are still ready to move on to the second phase of ceasefire?
They have a very clear incentive to move to the second phase, because the second phase is all about reconstruction and stabilizing the situation in Gaza. It should have been an interest of the Palestinians, first and foremost. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem that they care about that as much as they should have. And they are more interested in keeping their arms and staying in power. According to the plan, they are supposed to give up the weapons and give up the control of the Gaza Strip, so that Palestinian technocratic government should be able to take over, and the International Stabilization Force will be able to take care of the security matters. This has not been the case until now, and on behalf of Hamas, they refuse to do all of that. We hope that when we reach the stage where they have to do that, they will reconsider. But right now, it doesn't seem that they are interested in actually giving up their weapons.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Yossi for joining us today and sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on, the U.S. ambassador to Lebanon has said that Israel does not need Washington's permission to defend itself. Michelle Issa says that Israel will act according to its own security needs. Issa has added that the U.S. is pressuring Beirut to implement its long-standing decision to disarm Hezbollah. He has called it a historical decision vital for regional stability. For a year of violence, including 2 months of open warfare. The ceasefire calls for the Lebanese military and UN peacekeepers UNIFIL to control southern Lebanon. Hezbollah, however, continues to refuse giving up its weapons. Tensions along the border remain high as international and regional pressure on Beirut intensifies. Now, for this discussion, we welcome back Yossi Cooper-Wasser. He's an Israeli intelligence and security expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you, Yossi, for staying with us. Now, Yossi, what are the political consequences that could arise in Lebanon if a U.S. pressure to disarm Hezbollah intensifies, but given the group's refusal to relinquish its weapons?
Well, two things might happen. On the one hand, Israel will have to keep taking the necessary steps in order to make sure that Hezbollah is not redeploying in the southern part of Lebanon along the Israeli border, and that Hezbollah doesn't rearm and regroup in the northern parts of Lebanon. And for that purpose, we shall have to keep hitting the Hezbollah outposts and terrorists that belong to this organization, and the infrastructure that is being used for producing new arms. And the other thing that's going to happen is that the stability of Lebanon is going to be at risk, because as long as they do not convince Hezbollah to disarm, the ability to conduct the country from the economic point of view as necessary is very limited. And there are all kinds of sanctions against Lebanon, and the economy is not functioning in a reasonable way. And this is not going to change unless they manage to convince Hezbollah to disarm.
Yes, and how does this Israel's escalation of strikes in Lebanon, how do you think this affects the credibility of ceasefire agreement?
This activity is a part of the ceasefire agreement. According to the ceasefire agreement, the Lebanese army should have been doing the hard job of making sure that Hezbollah doesn't rearm and doesn't redeploy in the south. And that was supposed to be the task of the Lebanese army together with UNIFIL. None of them is doing what they are supposed to do. So according to the ceasefire, we are allowed to take action in order to prevent that from happening. That's what you've been doing throughout the years that have elapsed since the signing of this ceasefire. And unfortunately, I don't see any change in the foreseeable future, because the Lebanese government speaks highly about the need to disarm Hezbollah, but they do very little, if at all. So that leaves the burden on the Israeli defense forces to take action in order to make sure that this is the case. And as long as Hezbollah is refraining from hitting us back, we will keep probably with the same pattern. If they dare to hit back, then the situation is going to escalate considerably.
Yes, with that, I would like to thank Yossi Cooper-Wasser for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Now we move on. Russian drones struck residential areas of Kyiv overnight, killing at least one person and causing widespread power outages. Emergency crews are responding while families remain displaced. Authorities urge people to stay alert as the city braces for further attacks. Kyiv officials are investigating the full extent of the destruction and assessing ongoing security measures. Meanwhile, buildings and cars are heavily damaged. One of the residents say all the windows in our building were blown out. Let's listen into what some of the residents have shared.
Реактивно и шел на снижение. И он между цим 9-м поверхом и этим вошел вот цей будинок трьохповерховий в квартиру другого поверху. Там все, стіна упала, ну, то що повністю знешкоджений будинок і вже, не знаю, а в нашому повилітали всі окна. Всі. Вон на квартирі, в хаті, парадне, все порозліталося.
Ну, що відбулося? Щось прилетіло, на другий поверх я на першому живу. От, в квартирі по діагоналі, якої зараз вже нема. От, там жила сім'я. Один Сашко точно бачив, що загинув. Хлопчик з опіками, наче в лікарні, і жіночка, наче теж в лікарні. Але важка.
Ми постійно ходимо в підвал, ховаємось. І вже в підвалі почули, що такий взрив був, такий вибух, що навіть в підвалі було дуже чутно. Ну і багато було сусідів в підвалі. Ну, просиділи, поки все успокоїлось, було багато слышно вибухів, але цей був самий великий.
Now for this discussion, we welcome retired Major General Gigi Dwivedi. He's an international relations and defense expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General Gigi Dwivedi, for joining us again. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looking at this now, how might continued Russian drone strikes on Kyiv and, of course, Kyiv strikes on Russia, how do you think this is affecting the current ongoing ceasefire talks?
Well, Suma, first and foremost, I don't think President Trump is making any headway with his peace plan. And secondly, President Putin is in no mood to call off the war because he has laid down very stringent conditions that either Ukraine surrenders or he will continue with the war. Now, that's the ground situation. Now, war is actually being orchestrated at two planes. One is aerial warfare. In the aerial warfare, primarily, it is the drones and the missile strikes, and Russians are targeting Ukrainian energy infrastructure, primarily to cause immense damage to these infrastructures so that the Ukrainian public or the civilians suffer the loss of power in their cities. And right now, there are reports that almost 600,000 citizens are without power around the Kiev area. So that is one point that I don't think war is going to end anytime soon because President Putin is in no mood to end the war. The second point is that as far as the peace plans are concerned, this peace plan had 28 points and it is hugely in favor of Russia because it basically crosses all the red lines of Ukrainians. That means you surrender the complete Donbass area, that means Luhansk and Donetsk, where the fighting is going on. In fact, Ukrainians will ask, why are we fighting for in case we have to surrender all these areas? And then there are a number of other conditions, capping the Ukrainian forces, no NATO troops, election in 100 days. Now, all these are unacceptable, and that's why there's a big pushback from both the European Union and as also from Ukraine. So the point I'm trying to make is that at present, I think the 28-point plan of President Trump is actually in limbo because on the ground, the war is continuing, and not only aerial warfare, on the ground warfare also, there is a war going on, tactical battles are going on all along the front, and especially in the Pokrovsk area. So the situation is almost what I would say in this state of no go, and I don't think the peace talks are making any headway in the current environment because until President Putin decides to call it off, the war is not going to call it off, and the conditions that he has laid are not going to be acceptable to Ukraine and the European Union. So therefore, we are in a state of hiatus, or we can say state of stalemate.
Right.
Suma.
With that, I would like to thank Major General Gigi Dwivedi for sharing that insight as an international relations and defense expert. Now we move on to Hong Kong. Hong Kong has entered a period of solemn mourning on November 29th as residents paid tribute to the victims of the city's deadliest blaze in nearly 80 years. A total of 128 people are confirmed to have passed away in the massive fire that swept through the Wang Fuk High Court high-rise complex in Tai Po. Authorities warn that the toll may continue to rise with 150 people still unaccounted for. Flags flew at half-mast at a Sha Tin fire station where mourners expressed both sorrow and gratitude for the firefighters who battled the blaze. Let's listen into what was said.
都係等紀念下佢咯，見佢死難者。
點樣睇今次嘅火災啊？
呢啲好難㗎，即唔知形成咗咁樣燒到影響啲居民咯。好擔心咯，就希望佢好少好安息啦，死者。
悲痛，因為今次將有咁多嘅人死亡啦，係啊，咁其實身為一個大埔人啦，係啦，咁或者係香港人啦，其實都感到好心痛，因為好難得，即係好奇怪點解會一座大有咁多座大廈可以一次過係能夠被焚毀嘅，係啊，咁同埋即係受災嘅人數都好多，係啦，咁希望我都未必做到啲乜嘢，咁但係都係有一個關懷佢哋嘅心。
Now we move on to Australia. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has married his longtime partner Jodie Hayden, becoming the first sitting Australian leader to wed while in the office. The 62-year-old Prime Minister and the 46-year-old financial services professional held a private garden ceremony at the lodge in Canberra. Attended by close family and friends, Albanese has shared his joy publicly, posting a video of the couple, him in a bow tie and Hayden in a long white gown, celebrating as confetti fell. The ceremony comes more than a year after Albanese proposed on Valentine's Day 2023. The couple wrote their own vows and were married by a celebrant before walking back down the aisle to Stevie Wonder's Signed, Sealed, Delivered. Their first dance was Frank Sinatra's The Way You Look Tonight. Hayden has been a visible presence alongside Albanese for years, including during his 2022 election campaign and his party's strong win earlier this year. The newlyweds will spend their honeymoon in Australia next week, with all expenses covered privately. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.